Hi friends, and welcome to my channel. My name is Brandy. I am the owner and creator of the brand Boundless with Brandy and Boundless Treasures Boutique. I make tumblers. So today I wanted to share with you guys just a little bit of the basics, especially for those of you that are just getting started. I know that learning these things was super helpful. So today we are going to be talking about mixing and applying your epoxy, and hopefully you can pick up some tips and tricks that I personally like using and implementing it into what you like to do. So with that, let's jump right in. Here are the supplies I'll be using today. First up, you're going to need a tumbler that's ready for epoxy. Here's mine. I'm going to put my epoxy into a warm bath and get my cup turning in front of a space heater so it's nice and warm, which will make for easy epoxy application. If you do not have a bottle warmer, which you see me using here, please don't worry. We're going to be mixing 20 milliliters of epoxy. I'm using Artist Resin Part A and Part B. Must say, this is a new epoxy for me, and I am absolutely loving it. Okay, so I've marked my medicine cup at all points for where I want my epoxy to go. Now I'm simply going to pour it in. The nice part about warming up your epoxy is it makes it super easy to pour and super easy to mix. Here I'm just going to real quickly use my coffee filter to wipe off any excess resin that may have been left behind from my pour. It is important to make sure that you are measuring accurately. Reason for this: if you don't measure both parts as the instructions state, you're going to wind up with a sticky mess on your hand. Don't ask me how I know, but I do. Now I'm pouring 10 milliliters of Part B into my mixing cup, which I already had pre-marked. This will make sure that I have equal parts of both A and B. Now again, each epoxy is different, so you'll want to make sure that you are using the instructions provided to you by the company. You now need to stir. I am going to use a popsicle stick, but feel free to use a metal stir stick or a silicone stick works as well. Whatever you have on hand will work just fine. I happen to have my popsicle stick out, so that's what I'm going to use. And now I'm just going to stir. It's important that you get the sides and the bottom of your epoxy. You want to make sure that it is thoroughly mixed, so take your time. Don't rush through this part. You will know that you are done mixing because your epoxy will become clear and those ribbons that you see will disappear. You want clear, ribbon-free epoxy. That's how you know it's time for application. Okay, now that we've got our epoxy all mixed and it is clear, it's time to let it set, put on our gloves so that we can apply it to the cup and pop any micro bubbles you may have had. I like to use my torch for this, but you can also use a heat gun. Just be mindful that you are not burning your epoxy. Really quickly pop those bubbles. Now, I'm going to start by focusing on the handle of this Craft Haven camper mug. Reason for that is I want to make sure that I have good thin coverage and that I'm not going to have so much epoxy that it's pulling at the points where the handle meets the cup. So, while sometimes this can be a tedious step, it is a really, really important one. So, take your time when doing cups with handles. From there, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to pour small amounts of epoxy while using my finger to spread the epoxy all over the entire cup. Being mindful that I am creating thin coats. We don't want to do a flood coat. That will lead to some fish eyes that can happen. And it can cause micro bubbles the faster you pour it out of your cup. I'm going to pay special attention to ensure that I have good even coverage on the top rim as well as the bottom edges and the bottom of the tumbler. I do put a little bit of focus on the bottom of the tumbler as this portion can sometimes be overlooked. And we want that coverage to be nice and even. That way our cup has a flawless finish. Now that we have this all epoxied, I'm going to come in with my torch and I'm going to pop any micro bubbles that may have occurred while we were putting it onto the cup. I'm using the Burnzomatic. Got it at Walmart. I'll be happy to link it for you as well. And I'm just going over very, very quickly, being mindful to keep my distance as well as to not burn the epoxy. I typically do this for 1 to 2 full rotations just to ensure that I'm not missing any bubbles that may have surfaced while we were applying the epoxy. But that's it. Thank you guys so much, and don't forget to subscribe and like.